Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, students. Virtual Melt University 2020. We're rolling on and heading into the fall. A lot of craziness and uncertainty going on with you as a student, your college campus, your dorm life. I know that. I have a son who's a sophomore at Georgia, and every day brings a new day. But in the spirit of continuing to help you in your professional growth and experience, I am proud to welcome one of my favorite people, both in the industry and personally. He has done a lot of great things for me in the spirit of building relationships and reciprocal relationships. And early on, as I was founding and building Melt, really always gave me some nice coverage and some fair shots and abilities to speak on panels and speeches and keynotes and coverage and awards and all that. And just, has just really been a amazing friend to me in the industry. Very proud to call him my friend. David Adler is the chairman and founder of BizBash, which is the preeminent event marketer and producer, magazine, live events, design, style in the country. And if you're not following them online or socially or subscribing to their newsletters or their print publications, it is absolutely the leading trade media magazine for our industry, the event industry. They've got, great newsletters, great sites, and there are areas in the design and the event business that our students may have not thought about. And David today will enlighten you. He's the founder of this, graduated from American University with a degree in media, has had amazing, even before BizBash, amazing career, Primedia, Cone, Macmillan, Washington Dossier, a who's who. He's also, he is a servant leader, as we talk about. You got to give back, and he's very involved in the Fine Arts Committee, the State Department, Society of Independent Show Organizers, and I've always been amazed at the creativity of how he would create new magazines, create new ways to open doors for a lot of people in industry and venues. So, David, welcome to Virtual Melt University today.
Thank you so much, Vince. It's a pleasure to be here.
And as we are all going through a very tumultuous period, both professionally and personally, we're going to cover a lot of wide range of topics today. But right now, sort of on the come out, sort of tell us from where you sit as it relates to you talking to our students and our college students, thousands of them across the country, sort of where you see the event industry moving into the future and where these opportunities may lie, because we know, and we're praying that live events come back, but also the emergence of many new job opportunities, whether it be producing virtual events, whether it be event safety and those types of things. But sort of where you sit as the on the highest perch in this industry in the land, where do you see it?
Well, it's a really interesting time. I've never seen more innovation than what is going on today. Because, I mean, as you actually said, once you get off the roller coaster or the hamster roll or whatever it is, you actually have time to think. And the people in this industry are probably one of the most creative people in the world. Mm-hmm. And now that they're not doing everything, they're drinking from the fire hose on a daily basis, they're able to really do incredible things. I think that hybrid events are here to stay. The idea of combining the virtual and the face-to-face, along with incredible storytelling, I think is going to be the future. And I think we're seeing that today. Actually, as we speak this week and next week, we have the Republican and Democratic conventions, mm-hmm. which are amplifying the idea of what virtual events and hybrid events are like. And I think a lot of people are going to look at these and take a lot of key lessons from them. And as I've been watching the first one this week, and I'm going to be watching both of them very carefully, the idea of having people in remote locations and having what I call a hub and spoke approach to events is going to be the way things are going to happen on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, and it is fascinating because I've watched a lot of the coverage as well, and to your point about the pivot, the hamster wheel, time to think. I mean, I had not had a break in 40 years since I stepped foot on the Auburn campus in 1980, and when you're running a big old business as you do, and you did, and I did before your acquisition or sale, um, you don't really ever take that time, or you don't have that time. But this thing of hybrid events, there's lots of issues to unpack in that, but one is that you start begin, and then how is that going to impact like the travel and hospitality and airline industries and the culinary and the dining and the things you wear? I hadn't had a pair of breeches on since March.
Good thing it's audio.
Yeah, thank goodness for Zoom audio. And but I'm going, okay. Obviously nothing beats face to face, but I'm going like, do I ever really want to get back on an airplane and stay in a hotel? Forget the safety, just the hassle and everything, and the travel and going through all of that, and then take the risk of a face to face. I continue to ask our guests. When you go on vacation, you have vacation brain, but if we're not back in our offices for 6 to 12 months, how long will it take to get over the COVID brain? So if you were advising our students, because one of the big things ahas that we continue to uncover in this program is that a lot of students are beginning to question the time, money, and resources that go into a traditional 4-year education. Now we know you have to have the undergrad, but so many more ways to learn now, so many more specialty ways to learn. But to your point, you don't see this upheaval really going away, and look at this generation of kids who are viewing it from a completely different lens than me and you.
Well, what's interesting? What I've been noticing is that there is so much more opportunity for people who want to be on the event side of the business, because the event departments are now becoming the culture departments in companies. The C-suite people are going to the event people and saying, oh my God, you're the closest people to our audience or our employees or our customers. What do we do? And so I have seen the place at the table for the people in the event world are now more about culture, because just going to the office is going to be an event going forward. And
Wow.
so how do you make that the most effective use of the time of the people that don't want to necessarily get on an airplane, but when they do, it better be good. It better be right. Because, that once a year when you're going to bring together your entire sales force, let's say, or your entire team to talk about different things, has to be orchestrated internally as well as externally at a much higher level. I'm
Well,
sure you agree with that.
no, I mean, it's fascinating. The two things you just said are just mind blowing, and I think in a good way, because event people are the cultural people. We're on the front lines, and many times, and I've seen it from every side of the horn, but many times, in companies and agency side as event producers, we may not necessarily get the respect or understanding from all the other C-suite guys and executives and strategists and um, fancy, MBAs and all this kind of stuff. But I think you just hit on a big one, is that event people we are on the front lines of cultural. And now, to your point, going to the office is going to be a cultural event.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to lure people back to the office is going to be a cultural event. I mean, I'm dealing with it right now, and it's complex. Like, do I want the risk of them coming back? Do I want they being exposed or sick, or do I want to be exposed or sick, or am I going to get sued? And landlords and leases and efficiencies and all that. I mean, it's kind of fascinating. So if event people and rising stars and entry level into this space, because we're going to get into entry level in just a moment, are the cultural people. What are the things that our students need to be doing right now in college to prepare for that? Because this is not a traditional event path anymore. It's almost a
Nope.
psychological, anthropological, uh, you know, social. I mean, where's your vision in this?
Well, when I went to college, I went to American University, and I was very, very active in everything. And if you notice, and I think we've had this conversation before, 90% of the people that are active in college things have to do about how do you organize things and how do you connect people. And so my sense is one of the best ways of training for this future is to be involved in extracurricular activities and getting people to attend them, to go to them, to market them. I mean, I ran all the presidential campaigns on my campus.
Wow.
And I learned more by doing that, because what we do in the event world is we conduct focus groups every single day because we have to, because we say what's going to work, what's not going to work. The other thing I think that from an event person's perspective, I believe that event organizers are no longer event organizers. This is before COVID, but they've got to be trained collaboration artists. They have to know how to connect people. It's one thing to be able to logistically work something out, but it's the more important thing, I think, today is to make the experience valuable and to connect ideas and the flow of information. There's a great book from out of MIT, Alex. I forgot his last name. Oh my God, Alex. I forgot his name, but I will get you the name.
Yeah.
And it's called Social Physics: How Ideas Flow. And it's the study of, we've learned all about viruses, right? Conversation and ideas work exactly the same way.
Right.
So we need to know how to do it. Just placing the bar is a social physics exercise because you want to make sure people talk in different ways. So we have all these things about safety that are going to come up, but notice how the safety things are going to become new collaboration artist tools. The way people are going to be entering a stadium, or the way people are going to be entering a ballroom, are going to be timed. So there's going to be a whole world of people that are going to collaborate. Who's going to go in at the same time so that they meet each other and things happen and connect. So the social physics of things are going to become more important than ever. And it's observational in many cases. I think that college students should think about just watch everything, watch human behavior.
Right. Well, you've hit on some amazing things, and I love this collaboration artist. I love the fact I love this book, and we'll ask you more about this.
Alex Pentland, it is his name. He's an MIT, Alex Pentland, and it's called Social Physics: How Ideas Flow. And while it's also all over the internet in terms of, he's got a little bit of a cult following among people who when you go to a meeting and the CEO or the head of the meeting doesn't say anything. People get more done when the people are quiet, and they have to have a meeting and they have to go out and explore and come back and bring their ideas together. Are just very simple techniques, but they work.
Right. Well, I'm discovering a lot about that in this Zoom world. There's pros and cons of doing it. Because I don't. Nothing beats. Uh, Nothing beats that face-to-face and that eye-to-eye interaction. But in a new virtual world, virtual office world, some of the same tricks still apply, but then yet there's got to be an evolution. But the good news, I think, for the future of our industry is that these students are the most sophisticated consumers ever because of their digital nativism, sophistication with the wireless and the handheld, sophistication with the social media. So I want to back up and kind of go back to the beginning, and because David, one thing that we talk a lot about, and one thing that has emerged with many of our guests is that college is a tremendous time to find your passion, and college is a tremendous time to pursue your passion. No matter if somebody's saying, "Well, you got to go be a doctor, or you got to be a lawyer, an accountant, or whatever." But talk about, because obviously, if you were organizing presidential campaigns as a college student, you truly you already had some original passion about things. But so talk about your passion, how you pursued it on campus, and advice that you would give to our students about truly pursuing your passion.
Well, I do think the one thing I've learned is that, and I did this in college, and I've heard on your other podcasts with a lot of your, especially the guy from Coca-Cola, he talked about the leadership is the secret sauce. And that the idea of having ideas and putting them forward should be one of the most important things that people do. Most people do not have a lot of ideas. So if you're a marketer, like I know, Vince, you are an idea machine.
Mhm.
but you also can you also understand the mix between the popular culture and the idea.
Mhm.
So on campus, that is the, sort of being the brainstormer in chief at anything that you do is going to really, really hone your skills in a sense.
Mhm.
I think that's what I did. I mean, in fact, most people in marketing and events are idea guys, and we worry sometimes that we have so many ideas we can't execute. So I had to work
I had
on
to work on that, my friend.
yeah, I had to work on that. But I now I know that if I come up with an idea, I better, for God's sake, know how to execute it, because my biggest fear is to just have too many ideas. And
Well,
so,
a great idea is not a great idea without great execution.
absolutely,
But so but you get to campus and because I'm kind of a organizing junkie, event junkie, political junkie, that we say the campus is the ultimate professional lab. But so, how did you begin to channel that passion? Because all of we tell these students, like, they're never going to be around an environment where there are so many opportunities to learn, grow, and become a professional, even at an early age. I did that 4 years at sports information at Auburn, and it got me on my career path. So,
yeah.
give us a little bit more insight about
Well,
about
you
your.
know, I also believe that I believe that life is about managing serendipity. That you want to rub shoulders with people that are like you, in a sense, who you can learn from, who you want to go into being mentored. So I got involved in student government. I got involved in being the editor of my yearbook. I got involved in just going to everything and talking to the person next to me. One of the hardest things people have to do is to sit at an event, and in the old days, you can hold your hand out and say, "Hello, my name is David Adler. What is your name?" It's one of the most frightening things that people can do. And I think that you have to overcome that innate shyness that most people have. I mean, not everybody is as outgoing as you, Vince. Probably.
That might be the understatement of the day.
But I think most of us have to work at it. And so I do believe that it just those connections with people, and then thinking about the possibilities. The one thing we talk about, during the 60s, and actually in today's world, is people get around and say, what can we do to improve the world? And then let's fucking do it. It's really what it comes down to. And I think at campuses, you have that opportunity to really sort of reshape things. And it's a matter of being part and participating in everything, and being your own collaboration artist in many cases.
No, I love the collaboration artist. I may use that again, but
Oh yeah, it's to me. I believe that the most important thing we need to do is know how to collaborate, and not just talk about it, but have techniques.
right.
Adrian Sager, who wrote the book about unconferences, has all of these techniques about how you break. The icebreaker is still one of the most important things. So he will do things like, if you have people with different opinions, he'll make people sit in circles facing each other and talk about what they disagree about, and do things that sort of find common ground.
Right.
And we are in such need of that today, more than anything.
To your point, it's really old school. Is that sit down, take a deep breath. We're all people. We all got a lot going on, and find that common ground, find that collaboration, and you get listen. Like I said,
Mhm.
you got two ears and one mouth. But so okay, so you get out of American University, you're ready to conquer the world. You clearly had a lot of amazing experiences, but what we're fascinating with entrepreneurs. What led you to the aha moment that said, okay, I think I'm going to dive in the deep end and risk it all, and I'm going to start my own business? Because we get a lot of that from our younger kids now. They're like,
Yep.
hey, I'm young. What do I really have to lose by trying it right now? I can always go back to work for somebody else. So, what led you to the entrepreneur dive?
So I grew up. My father was in the advertising agency business, and
In New York or
in
Washington?
Washington D.C. He was the real estate king of Washington D.C.
Wow.
He was also a novelist. He wrote 50 novels. He just died last year. He wrote a major novel called The War of the Roses that
Wow.
that's going to come back out as a major play. that Jason Alexander is directing, and now 22, and potentially new movies and products. But so he had an advertising agency, and he didn't like me in the agency business. And then I started working for him, and I kind of didn't like it as much as I thought. And I came up with this idea to do a society magazine for Washington, D.C. called Washington Dossier. And so because I had his infrastructure and I had a few bucks, I created this magazine that became sort of the society magazine for Washington, D.C., and did it from the time I was 21. I was one of the first startup guys, I think, when you look back.
Right.
And I started out as a 16-page newsletter, and it ended up as a 300-page magazine that I was able to sell 15 years later. But it was everyday grind. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you're pushing the rock up the hill every single day.
Oh,
and it is never ending. There are great rewards, but there are also disadvantages to that because you don't get a rounded life because you are so obsessed with being successful.
Right.
There's good and there's bad. So I turned that into a society magazine where people thought I was a maitre d' because I was out every night in black tie at a Washington event. And when you can tell the hors d'oeuvres, the caterer by the hors d'oeuvres, you're in big trouble.
Right.
And so but it became, what we did is we combined the popular culture with the vehicle of the technology. The technology was a magazine, but then we would do special features like I picked the 500 most important Washingtonians in power, which was a pretty big deal for a 23-year-old kid to do, and sort of
a brilliant strategy if you think about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's an old strategy that kind of works. You're the arbiter. The key is to be the arbiter. In an event, it's not undifferent because you're the mayor of your niche. You're the mayor of your thing that you're creating. A magazine at that time was kind of that thing. So we were able to turn paper pages into good real estate to sell advertising, and it was highly successful. And I sold it 15 years later and ended up going into the corporate world and got because I was an entrepreneur, you're able to figure stuff out. And I ended up working for this guy named Robert Maxwell, who was a big British media lord.
Oh, yeah.
And he bought a company called Macmillan, and I ended up being head of corporate communications for Macmillan. Because I was an entrepreneur, he related to me, and I was able to do anything that he thought, I could do anything on a dime, literally on a dime. And so I did that and ended up, he sold that company, and I ended up becoming head of corporate communications for a company called Prime Media, which had 350 magazines.
Oh, yeah.
And the CEO and I became really good friends. And we thought that the capital that you create when you do events was so incredible that it was the best way to increase shareholder value. So we would host, we would bring all of our investors to the 25th anniversary of New York Magazine, which we owned, or Soap Opera Digest, or Daily Racing Forum. We did the 100th anniversary of Daily Racing Forum. So the events become the secret sauce in many big organizations. And it becomes the intersection between internal communications, culture, investors, and everything. And you have access to the C-suite people. And once you have access to the C-suite people, they say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, if they're good. And that is kind of the secret way to advance yourself in the corporate world, in my opinion.
I think you've hit on so many things. Listen, man, I did not realize the depth of this with your dad and relationship with Robert Maxwell. And obviously, I did a bunch of business with Prime Media sort of back in the day. But now we're in this great pivot where you're moving away from print. Everything is social and digital and virtual. And so you and I, quote unquote, took a traditional path, which was actually not a traditional path back in the day. But now the new traditional paths for our students, where should they begin looking for these opportunities, or what other ancillary skill sets would you suggest they pursue, or resources to get themselves equipped for this new world? Because David, one thing I want you to address, and I'm seeing it and I'm hearing it and I'm feeling it myself, is that it's going to be a nuclear winter for the entry-level job market right now, because there's too many people in our industry who are unemployed, who are willing to take a lesser job for a lesser wage to get back in the workforce and get money coming back in. And it's going to squeeze the hell out of our entry-level students as well. So what are the things that they should be doing right now? And that's why I'm doing this book, Build Brand New. I'm like, hey, you were in a dogfight before COVID. You're really going to be in a dogfight
Oh yeah.
for an entry level job right now. But give them insight and advice
So,
from the master of what they should be doing.
so I believe that people should be volunteering for advocacy groups. Like in right now, we have a group called the Live Event Coalition is out there, and you have Go Live. You have all these different people that are trying to join up and figure out how to navigate the world together. They're collaborating together, and if I would suggest people volunteer to help on those, because there's no labor for any of those available, and everyone is just kind of pitching in. Now, it comes back to my experience after 9/11 in New York City. After 9/11, I decided to get active in the city and started a coalition called the Convention Exhibit Meeting and Event Coalition to bring business back to DC. And I was able to garner 300 companies to do things like, let's host events at Gracie Mansion and bring all the meeting planners to town. Let's light the Empire State Building in yellow to bring Snapple to have a meeting. Let's have a thank you event to thank Microsoft and all these different companies for staying in New York after 9/11, and did events in harbor cruises because the harbor cruise industry was having trouble. And so we needed people to do that. And the relationships that I formed in that world sustained me for 20 years. In fact, when I got one company involved, American Express, they got to know me, and they funded BizBash at the time for a year in advance for advertising, and saved the company during that era. So the relationships that you form under those kind of circumstances are more incredible. There's another guy named Michael Ceribelli. So he does this thing called the Hot List now, and he's kind of a big event planner. And so during every year, I would volunteer to work on the World Trade Center Memorial. So one year, our job was to go work the pit. So they completely excavated the site, and they put a little pool of water in the bottom, and we were down there as the ushers, kind of, where these kids that were 3 years old and 4 years old were putting flowers in to memorialize their parents that they never met. And the bonding experience that you have when you do these things emotionally together, it was unbelievable. And so you create a cadre of people that you never can have these kind of connections. So I would suggest just getting involved or starting organizations to help in your own colleges and things like that. But getting involved with professionals, they need the help. Don't ask for money, because you're not going to get it in many cases. But I would say do something like that. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that is brilliant, spot on, and you've segued into another topic that is near and dear to me, and we're talking to our students about it daily. Is the value of not only beginning to build relationships, but the value of constantly nurturing relationships. The first two letters of relationship is RE. The first two letters of reciprocal is RE. Reciprocal relationships, and then that people say, well, how have you represented Coca-Cola for 20 years? It's that I've never take the relationship for granted. And so, give our students your philosophy on building, nurturing, maintaining, and growing relationships, and never taking them for granted.
Oh, absolutely. Constantly, you have to be real authentically friends with people. You can't just be transactional. The minute people sniff out transaction in a second, and this young generation is even better at it than anyone else. They know when you're being bamboozled in a second. So the idea is, if whatever skill set you have, you can figure out ways to put yourself in their shoes and come up with ideas for them. So a lot of times I think about, okay, I'm driving. I'm sure, Vince, you do this. I'm driving to see a potential client, and I know that they're involved in this particular cause. So I'm more interested in helping them figure out the cause, or they're having their kids are interested in certain things, and so you're thinking about how you can help the kids and the families. When I was at Primedia, I was in charge of the internships for 17 magazine and all those things. The number one thing the richest guys in the world wanted was to get their kid an intern at 17 magazine or at Daily Racing Form or something like that. So you're constantly just sort of putting yourself in other people's shoes.
Well, we have to also realize that no matter who we are. We're people too, and I encourage our students to say, "Hey, look, David Adler, Vince Thompson, we were once where you were," and so we have empathy, we have understanding, and we want to be asked to help and give that insight and that guidance. And I've been, like I said, I've been blown away um, of the people in our industry who said, I've said, hey, I'm pivoting this intern program virtual, and I need 30 minutes of your time just to inspire and inform. But to your point is that in any relationship, personal, professional, romantic, friendship, whatever it is that it's got to be reciprocal. You and
Yep.
I walked away from many relationships that we thought were, but were not. Knowing those, recognizing those signs, don't continue to enable a relationship that's not reciprocal. It's okay to walk away, but yet, I mean, you and I met many years ago, and to your point, the key word is transactional. Every relationship does not have to have a transaction or an outcome because in the spirit of living and governed by serendipity, one day it may have an outcome.
Yeah.
And you never know where that is, but if you just approach it with the purest motives, and it usually works out. So the other thing is, and it sounds like I know the answer to this question, but you've had some tremendous mentors along the way. But not only talk about the importance of mentors, but quantity of mentors and how to seek and find them out.
Yeah. My mentor, one of the most interesting mentors I had, it's all through serendipity. I was studying this guy. I was like a huge fan of New York Magazine for
Right.
years and years and years. I love New York Magazine, and I ended up studying it and watching it very carefully. And ended up going on this vacation to a place called Rancho La Puerta. This is a little. I don't think that every college student can do this. And the person that I ended up sitting next to was the editor of New York Magazine, I've been studying for 100 years.
You got to be kidding me.
And his name is Clay Felker, and we became best friends. And we would walk up and down the mountain every day. And we just, he ended up putting an offer in to buy my magazine after a few years. And it was kind of like, it's all of this stuff, you sort of make your own luck, I guess, through this managed serendipity thing. But I do believe that, you just never know. You just never know where your mentors are going to come from. And it's always about, talking to the janitor the same way you talk to the CEO.
Amen. Amen.
That's, to me, is still, to have some sort of like really humility and all this stuff. You see people that are a little high flying sometimes, and they just think that it is all about jumping over one person to get to the next. But you got to watch falling down. But the best advice that I ever had. This is a little off that topic, but it's an advice that I really sort of appreciated from my boss, Bill Riley, who was the CEO and chairman of Prime Media, which is $2 billion company at one point. And he said to me that, when people come in and pitch ideas to you, you should say yes to everything, because you can always say no later. Because 90% of people that say, oh, I have this idea, they never follow through with anything.
Right.
And so I always say yes to everything now, because you never know. And I say, show me more information about it. And it edits itself out very quickly.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you're the person that when someone says yes and you follow up quickly, you are going to be miles ahead of your next competitor.
You and I, it gets me in trouble sometime, by the way, when I do that. But to your point, it'll weed itself out really quick. But I'm fascinated with this serendipitous counter with the editor of New York Magazine. But one thing that a credo that I live by, and I've tried to talk to the students about this because I'm a living proof of it. My first journalism class, I was going to go back to the Gulf Coast and be a sports writer, was taught by the guest lecturer was the head of sports publicity for Auburn athletics. And at the end of the class, I went up to him and I said, man, that's where I want to be. I want to come volunteer for you. And he said, well, get over this afternoon. And had I not taken that shot, had I packed my sack and gone to lunch or gone out, to my next class or whatever, my career path would have been completely different. And the same with you, taking that shot to strike that conversation up, to strike that friendship up, to strike those hikes up. Encourage our kids to never fail to take that shot, because what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yep.
I mean, what is the worst? I mean, Michael Jordan says I never hit a shot that I failed to make. And
Yep.
okay. So as we're heading into the stretch of this, you're widely known. You're founder and chairman of this major event magazine, LinkedIn, and everything. So we tell our kids that every interaction they have with David Adler or Vince Thompson is a form of an audition, and you may have the time it takes to pass a billboard on the interstate to react. What gets David Adler's attention to respond to a young person or student seeking advice, connections, wisdom?
You know what? It's interesting that you asked me that. I think there's a lot to be said for energy. There's a lot to be said for, looking interested. A lot to be said for the body language. There's a lot to be said for how you respond in being like real, and then bringing. What I do is I like to ask younger people what's going on because I don't really know.
Right.
So when they give me the insights of what the world is like, rather than what I want to hear, that to me says it all. When they sort of are not as respectful and suck up, that works even better than the ones that are being so polite and so canned.
Right.
So the idea of what is your authentic self?
Right. And then by the way, so when they reach out to you, I immediately flush the cursory ones that don't put any effort to figuring out who I am or who you are,
Yeah.
because they're already communicating to you what type of employee they would be. And many times, maybe they're not just getting this knowledge on campus, but talk about things that so let's just role play. If somebody reaches out to you on LinkedIn, what would spur you to respond? Because you
So
get millions of these
yeah,
requests.
I'll tell you what. LinkedIn is really like it's like overwhelming, and I rarely look at it to
Right.
the extent of
I will
it.
confess I'm a junkie, by the way, but I know that doesn't shock you.
Right. Like I have 40,000 people on my LinkedIn thing. And so it's hard to get it. But if someone says, "Oh, I am a big fan of your podcast. I listen to it all the time, the Gather Geeks," that says, "Oh my God, you think that's great? That's great." Or I read this great article you did in BizBash, and let's talk more about it. Or I read
Right.
this editorial that you did, and I'd love to discuss it more. Or if it's not this, what do I want a job.
Well, no, I mean, of course, everybody wants a job,
Yeah.
and my pet peeve is that we got these generic websites, careers at Melt ATL, and they'll go, "Hey, I'm Joe Smith. Here's my resume, and I need to make X dollars." I immediately flush them. I'm like, "Really?
Yeah.
You went 4 years to prepare for this audition?"
Yeah.
And it's but what you hit, it's attitude, effort, and energy. And
Oh,
even when you and I first met, we kind of had this shared energy with one another.
yeah.
Come from totally different backgrounds. Washington, and I'm from Lower Alabama, but we had this common energy that we shared and common passion, and we found that common ground coming out of that. So as we wrap this a fascinating conversation up, and you've given us some amazing go-tos. I love the unconferences. I love the Bill Riley advice, but other go-to books, podcasts, other resources outside of BizBash and the
Oh.
traditional ones that are your go-tos.
I There's some podcasts that I like that I listen to every week. Pivot with Kara Swisher, which to me is like right on target in terms of what's going on in the tech world and things like that. I've gotten out of my New York Times habit reading. I used to be a reader of the newspapers every single day, and I missed that a lot
Mm-hmm.
because I was a print guy and I really liked it.
Right.
But
Right.
I do listen to the daily. We're no longer in the business we think we're in. We're in the habit business. And what habits are you establishing that keep you informed? One of the things that I regret that I haven't done enough is more reading of fiction, classic fiction.
Right.
Like even over the holiday, over this whole awful mess, I was reading things like Madame Bovary and things like that, where you see how events were done in the past.
Right.
And I never thought of that as
Mhm.
training. But when you understand how people celebrated in the past, it helps your career today more than you would ever imagine. And you get ideas and things like that. I still read all the trades every single day.
Right. Got
I
it. Yeah.
even still read Variety and all that from a Hollywood perspective. Um, and BizBash, our BizBash Daily is one of the best places actually to go to get.
I love it. I love it. It's required. It's required reading. So for our students, if you're not subscribing to BizBash Daily, and they are right on top of. In fact, I think I forwarded one of the articles today from BizBash Daily to my team. You guys are just spot on, right on top of
So
everything that's going on. And now that you're owned out of Atlanta, my goal is to try to do some. I've been after David for years to do some big events and conferences down here in Atlanta. Maybe
oh
one
yeah,
day we'll be able to get to do that. But David, we could go on all day. This is
all
just
day.
amazing, and I'm always informed and inspired when I get to talk to you and sharing your wisdom with so many of our students. You're going to hear from a lot of our students. To your point, I've impressed upon them and taught them and trained them that personal follow up, handwritten notes, a personal touch goes a long way in our mine and your old school books. But David Adler, chairman, founder of BizBash, listeners, as you can tell, this is an amazing businessman and person whose values I respect highly. He's obviously, you can tell his brilliance through this, David, it's just been amazing time that you have spent with us. We look forward to hearing more from you, and we'll probably reach out to you soon as this ever evolving industry that we're in continues to evolve at the speed of sound. So, David Adler, chairman, founder of BizBash, thank you so much for joining the students of Virtual Melt University.
Thank you, Vince. You have been a role model and a hero of mine for many, many years, and we have connected. We don't even know why.
Right.
We have connected in ways that are really fantastic and magical. So thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.